You know what time it is. It's time for another episode of the Moose Hunt Podcast, brought to you and supported by OMM Outfitters in the Eagle Lake Sporting Camps of Eagle Lake, Maine. As always, I'm your host, Chris Richards. Thrilled to be with you all today, bringing another episode of the Moose Hunt Podcast for all our listeners out there. And I do want to take a moment to actually thank all the folks tuning in. When we started out this project, we really had no idea about the response, but it's been phenomenal. We've had thousands of downloads from dozens of countries, and we just really appreciate everyone tuning in, listening to our stories, learning a bit about the outdoors from our perspective up here in northern Maine. Today, we're sitting down, meeting another member of our team, Mr. Erik Poland. We're going to hear a little bit about his background, how he got into the outdoors, and those types of things. We're going to hear a very legendary deer hunting story. Actually, we're going to sidebar from the moose hunting stories a bit to hear about Erik's exciting deer hunt this year. Jump into a discussion about packs. I'm always up for a rifle caliber debate. I'm always up for a snowmobile brand debate. So we'll see where all that goes. But Erik, my friend, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you, bud?
You know, I can't complain. We were just talking before we got on here. For our listeners tuning in there, depending on where you are, right now where I'm at, we are a cozy, I'm just checking the weather, most up to date. We're up to a cozy 2 degrees here in Herman, Maine, with a wind chill of about 20 below. It's even colder where Erik is.
Yeah, I think we've climbed up to -6 now from -21 or something this morning. Ridiculous.
So I shared in the last episode when the guys kind of flipped the script on me. I'm not going to lie, I was not ready for that conversation, man. Like,
it's awesome.
They're like, just kidding, we're grilling you. And I was like, all right, I'm glad to be back in control, I guess, in the driver's seat on this thing. But I shared, for our listeners out there, that I work at Maine in the admissions office. And one of the things that comes with that is we manage all like the campus tours and visitors that come to the university.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, we had 54-degree wind chills like yesterday afternoon on campus, and then like this morning. And so we were talking about this, and we had people coming to campus from much further south than the Pine Tree State. And so I had our team. I said, call these people, because normally we call if we're getting big snowfall, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said, call these people and just make sure they understand the conditions they're coming in, because we can't have some high school kid showing up in a sweatshirt thinking they're good to go. And we just assumed everyone would cancel. It's not the case, man. They all came. And what I think was really cool was all these prospective students, like these teenagers, particularly their fathers. We called them and like, you connect with the kid's old man, and they're like, he wants to go to Maine. He's got to be able to handle it. We're coming. I'm like, good for you, dude. Good for you, dude. But we're staying inside. It's nice and warm in the house. And I thought this is the day to sit down and jump on a podcast with Erik. So it's going to be good. I'm really excited about this one. And we're going to, we'll jump right into it. But Erik, why don't you just do an light introduction, kind of, who you are, where you're from. Obviously, you're one of the guides here on Team OMM, and kind of jumped on board and had a good season this past year. But just kind of a little on your background, what you do outside of the guiding, and then really just kind of roll it right into how did you get into the great outdoors before we jump into, I'm going to give a couple teasers here, some pretty incredible accolades. I'm excited to hear this deer hunting story, but then I'm really excited to hear, for our listeners out there, Mr. Poland is actually a Maine state record holder. He's quite the fisherman as well. So we're going to hear about that as well, but jump right in, man.
Yeah, well, you got kind of already introduced my name, but I'm Erik Poland, and I've been with OMM for one season now. It's been a great opportunity there, and I've enjoyed it immensely. I can't wait for moose season again, although it's way too far away. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, Chris, it's funny though. You can change our names and our faces, but the story's still kind of always the same as far as how'd you get into the outdoors? My
Yeah.
parents, my dad. You know,
Yep.
it almost feels like we're all beating the same drum sometimes. You know what I mean? But it's,
Yeah.
I guess, the common denominator for all of us. We were dragged out there as kids, and not dragged, I mean begged to go out and deer hunting with my dad. Probably one of the most influential human beings in my life would be my grandfather, who was 90, still with us. And
Yep.
man, he did everything with me. Taught me how to fly fish, taught me how to fish, fished with me every day in the summer. We still have a house in Eustis where he lives. And, that was kind of my role in, interestingly enough, in the moose hunting world. When I was, as we're kids, and I'm out with him fishing all the time all summer, and this is mid 90s. So what are you seeing every single day in the Eustis Stratton area? Moose everywhere,
Right.
everywhere and there were moose all over the place at that time. And so when I was 12 years old, I put him in for a moose permit, and he was in Florida, and he didn't really even know. So I put the whole
Yeah.
family in. He was probably in his 70s at the time, had never applied, and he got drawn, and I was his sub permittee.
Wow.
And he
Wow.
basically all but turned that permit over to me. That was 1998, and we got a moose. We shot a cow. That was back in it didn't matter, either sex days. You just got a moose tag and you could go for it,
Right.
And we ended up shooting a cow on that Tuesday, and then I guess that just kind of blew the doors open for me for moose hunting. I was jumping on everybody's hunts from there on out that I could get on. We got drawn a few more times, family, friends, and just, like I said, same drum, just got addicted to it.
So you're on a hunt in 98. Are you 10? How old were you
13.
then? 13. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're 13. All right. So actually you even got into it earlier because it was interesting for me. I'd been around them, hunting through my teens and stuff. But really when I got to college is when when I mentioned that in the last podcast, that's when the Richards family decided that every family member every year was going to pull a permit for.
Yeah, through friends and family and stuff too, man. I counted it out. It might have been you and I don't remember when we were the September season, but I've hunted like 8 different moose zones or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Some
You know,
pretty
I
obscure ones.
What would you say would be the most obscure?
The hardest was zone 13, hands down. So much closed land.
Yeah.
You kind of get, I think you're probably familiar with it, but right when you get to the top of 13 where it's like good moose hunting, which borders the bottom part of 8,
Right.
that's where the line is, below Long Falls Dam, all that. So it's tough. We got one. And interestingly, we actually hired a guide. So that's one of my first, it was my cousin's tag, one of my first introductions to Maine guides. And he was pretty awesome. And we ended up getting a moose, I think, because of him, because we scouted that summer, and it was just, gate after gate, posted sign after posted sign. And that's when my cousin, I think he lucked out and hired him in September for an October hunt, and it worked out well. So yeah, that was like my first introduction to guiding, going to a sporting camp, and it was, man, infectious.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were interested in that at that point.
Yep. Yeah, I think that, that guy he was pretty influential, subtly, kind of, subconsciously for me. And that was probably 10 years ago, give or take. So
Yep.
that, doing that with him was when I first kind of started thinking about getting my guide's license, or how cool it would be and stuff like that.
So when you finally got your guy's license, just curious, because I've always wondered this. What was your preparation? Did you do one of the schools? Did you how'd you go about it?
I did.
Yeah.
I did a guide prep class, and it's beneficial. I think it's beneficial. We all know a fair amount of stuff, but they are really good at teaching you the intricacies, teaching you how to pass the test, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
No,
think
for sure.
a lot of value came out of that class for sure.
What I found, because I did one as well, and I think this is because I actually it was kind of cool. My October season this year, the father-daughter combo I guided, the young lady, her old man reached out to me because she'd actually expressed an interest in getting her guide's license, like in Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, wow, which that was kind of cool. And to hear that she might be interested in that. And I had suggested to him that, the preparatory type course is big because, and I'm sure you'd attest to this, anyone listening in, if you're thinking about getting into this commercially, there is so much more to it guiding than like finding and killing a moose or a deer or a bear or whatever.
Yeah, you know what you know, but in the grand scheme of the industry, it's hard to know enough. You know what I mean? Or to know it all. And I think that's like you're saying, that's the big step that class puts you in a different mindset, kind of.
You touched on something there, I think, and Nate harps on this big time, and I couldn't agree more, is what I found when I became a guide, and I don't know if you had this experience, but for me it was suddenly, as I started building relationships within this, like within the, I guess the industry or the type deal, was how much I didn't know.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I almost find annually how excited I am and why I enjoy this team so much. And, people coming on board and jumping in, connecting with you and all the other guys is, how much I learn and how much you can gain from like the evening discussions back at camp after hunting every day.
Yeah. I mean, you can never learn enough, right? You can't stop. If you've stopped, I guess it's time to find something else to do.
Amen to that. I was funny. My wife said, she goes, "You're talking about moose. You're doing these moose podcasts through the winter," and I'm like, "Babe, I'm like thinking about this year round.
Oh yeah.
It's a build and a build and a build, and when I see these pictures put up on like social media of like spotting moose from the plane, I'm like, oh my god,
yeah."
Like.
I mean, you really can't turn it off completely. Seasons come and go and change, but it's always in the back of my mind anyway.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's transition a bit here because, one thing, if there's listeners out there, tuning into, these hunting podcasts, there's a variety of them out there really focused on deer hunting and Maine deer hunting. The culture of deer hunting in Maine is unique. And I think even unique geographically throughout the state. I think talking with you, I think you and I are a little more kind of grew up in the Western Mountains type deal. Snow, cold, lower deer densities than, versus like Adam Newell, who lives down on the coast. And I talked to Adam and he's talking about, I'd see 30 deer in a day. And I kind of joked, I'm like, man, that's a couple of seasons, where I'm from originally.
Yeah, 3-4 seasons, maybe.
And so particularly, I think the romantic, the beautiful challenge, the ultimate, I think, outdoor pursuit of chasing a mature whitetail buck down on snow. I think it's probably one of the hardest things to do in the outdoors. I have a passion for it. I know you have a passion for it. You particularly had an awesome story this year. Shot an absolute a gnarly, heavy racked buck like I've never seen before. And so I want you to kind of walk us through that story, kind of beginning to end. And don't share any roads, but I will welcome any Onyx.
Trust me, they're not secrets anymore.
Any Onyx points you want to drop on me.
Yeah, you already got it.
I already got them.
You know, I pondered this a little bit. We talked briefly this morning. I think there's a prelude to this that's important, and I think it feels to me like it's something that goes unsaid sometimes. So I'm just going to throw it out there as far as we talk about persistence a lot, you know, and keeping going. And I talked to you about this particular buck, which is previous to the one that I shot. But I think a big takeaway for me this year prior to this that's can be an important learning point too is, man, sometimes you got to quit. And we don't like to do that, right? Nobody likes to do that. But, you know, short and brief, the week before I killed this deer, I spent 3 days on the same mountain chasing the same buck, and he burned me every time. And the lead into that is that I quit, right? I had to give up on that deer. I wasn't going to kill him. It just wasn't going to happen. His escape routes were good. They were better than me. I was alone, couldn't make moves on him. And I just decided, you know what, I got to change it up. This isn't working. I'm not going to catch him. And I was close a couple times, but whatever good that is, you know?
Right.
So I went to a spot where I'd hunted a couple of years ago, probably 2020 or 2021. I don't remember exactly. And I'd been in there this summer, and this plays into a lot of stuff too that we talk about with moose hunting or just hunting in general. And I noticed that halfway down this road, the land management company had yanked a bridge out. So I dropped a pin when I was in there exploring around this summer, and kind of filed it in the back of my mind. You know, that's cool. That's going to limit down a lot of traffic, a lot of people, stuff like that. So when I got into deer season, went through that whole deal with that other buck for a while. I came home from work, which I work a 24-hour shift at a local fire department in kind of southern Maine. And I got in my truck and I drove home, talked to Allison Hemden-Hod, who's my girlfriend, by the way. And she's like, I'll just go, you know, you'll be mad if you stay home. So she was right.
Yeah.
And I guess probably I was going to go anyway, because we had 4 inches of snow and it was snowing that day. So I took off and I, you know, going through my mind, I don't know if the same is for you or whatever. Up here, I have spots, but you know, I don't run trail cameras. I don't have tree stands. I don't have any of that stuff. So yeah, kind of just turns into a rolling through the Rolodex in your brain. Where am I going today? You know? Mm-hmm. So the washout popped into my head. I'm like, well, you know, I haven't been in there in a couple of days, so I'm going to go down in there. Went down in. And again, a lot of things have changed, and I think it's good. There's a lot of people that are out exploring this big timber around here and stuff, you know, and you definitely see more than you used to, but that's good. You know, it's an opportunity for people, and there's plenty of land, and we all have room to share, you know. Yeah. And I pulled into where that washout was, and there was a truck there, and I'm not necessarily the kind of person who's gonna crowd, and there's so much room, but it just doesn't feel right to me, you know, to park next to another person. And right. So I said, you know, I figured, well, I'll go down to the washout, see what it looks like for tomorrow. I don't, you know, we'd had a lot of rain, some snow, didn't know how deep the water was. Just want to have a heads up for 4 a.m. when it's dark, you know. And I got down there and I met a gentleman walking up the road. I said, is this your truck parked up here? And he said, yep. And I said, all right, well, I said, are you leaving? Because if you're not, I'm going to turn around and, you know, you can have this spot. I'm not going to hunt here. And he said, nope, I'm going to get in my truck and take off. So I just, you know, we parted ways cordially. I said, well, I'm going to go on the other side of the road where you weren't and just look around and see what I can see. So I waited in my truck just to make sure he was going to leave. I, you know, didn't want to upset anybody and not into anything like that. You know, I think it's super important that we keep this sport healthy, happy, you know.
Amen. Amen.
He did it, you know, he ended up getting in his truck and driving off. So I went the opposite way that he did, and immediately softwood cut off, tracks everywhere. And you could see where there was probably 2, if not 3 bucks chasing, I don't know how many does around in this old softwood cutoff, to the point where, I mean, I'm certainly no expert tracker. I couldn't really cut a track that was fresh enough or straight enough in one line to really decide anything. So I just kept going up the brook in the general direction that it looked like all the tracks were headed. And I got into this, I went through an alder bog that kind of transitioned into like this spruce fir, nasty 8-foot Christmas tree kind of regen, which we're all familiar with.
I call that the nonsense. That's the nonsense is what I refer to that as.
And I was really kind of like in the push through it mode, you know, like you got to get through it.
Right.
And a deer took off. You know, I could see the flag. I saw 2 jumps, couldn't see what it was. And I thought, all right, well, that's a good, you know, we've just woke the world up a little bit here. So whatever that is going to be. So I kind of milled around for a minute. Keep in mind, I mean, this is noon. I don't really have a lot of time to do a lot, but here I am. And I waited around for a few minutes, drank a bottle of water, and just trying to kill a little time, let the world settle down a little bit, and decided I was going to walk over and see. I was pretty confident it was bedded down, you know, what was going on where I jumped it. So I walked over. I guess I missed a spot to prelude to that, and I'm not going to replicate it because I'm terrible at it, but I tried my best to imitate a snort wheeze when it took off, and I grunted a couple times. That's probably a fairly important piece.
Yep.
Then milled around, and then walked over to the bed, and it was pretty obviously a doe bed. And I was kind of looking things over and waited a few more minutes, and, you know, and then I'm like, well, deer leads you to other deer, right? So I just started tracking that deer, you know, that doe track, seeing where it would take me, seeing what the deer in that area were doing, because there was uniquely in that area so much sign that, you know, you couldn't figure it out. Usually it's the other way around, but as, I don't know, 20 yards after that bed, she veered onto an old grown-in skid road, and you could only see down like one tire track. Everything else had grown up from either the forwarders or the skidder or whatever it was.
Yep.
And I noticed, and it's snowing, and there's 4 or 5 inches of snow and like an inch of new snow, that there's another track coming into her track, and it's, you know, the snow itself, the new snow is flipped over, you know, kicked up. I'm like, geez, that's interesting. So I walked over and looked at that, and it was substantially bigger than her track. So I thought, all right, this is good. Walked a little further, you could see where both deer stood, milled around, and like, you know, you can tell when they're on 4s, and they were staring back at me. A thing to point out in this is I picked the other side of the road and we went in because the wind was in my face. That was my intent, was to hunt that side. As you know, when I left my house, knowing which way the wind was blowing and stuff. So they stood there, man, I mean, milled around. There was 100 tracks where those deer had just done circles and were looking and waiting for me to come along, see what I was. And then they veered off. The doe went one way, the buck went the other way, or the bigger track. So I said, well, kind of a no-brainer. I'll follow the bigger track. And, 20 minutes later, smoking fresh, right? Like, it's your dream.
Right.
And, man, I went on it for probably another 15 minutes. And I started to have some doubts as to what was going on. Because, it's pretty thick, pretty nasty. And this buck was just pushing through stuff I wouldn't even really necessarily expect that he would, And anyways, to shorten up the story, I come out into this skidder trail, still only one track, trees everywhere, and I just happened to look up, and I'm creeping because I know I'm close, and he was standing there looking at me, standing in his backtrack, and I could just see one beam. I don't know what you think about this, but if it's big enough to see one beam, I'm shooting. So I didn't really hone in on what it was, how big it was. And he was kind of standing in the brush like I was, so I just picked a spot on his chest and sent one, and he went down, wheeled again, or shot as he was wheeling. He went down, got back up on a knee, onto his front feet, shot again, and, you know, that whole story. And he went down for good. And, man, when I walked up, couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe the rack on that thing. Just the mass, the points everywhere. Just would have never guessed that that's what I was getting into, but it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, so did you have service by chance right there where you got him?
No, I in-reached you.
No, that's right. You in-reached me. That's right. And then when I got the picture, I was like, holy cow, dude. Like, wow.
Yeah. It was, I mean, and it wasn't a monster rack, not necessarily a monster buck, 183.
That's a big buck.
Definitely run down, no doubt. And short body. I mean, you saw the pictures. He wasn't, he was never a long deer, but still awesome.
No, that was awesome. There's nothing like it. I think one key thing too, you touched upon, and I think it's good. It's funny how you file those things away in your memory bank. Like you drive down in a road network and here's this bridge out. You pin that and you think, well, that won't have much traffic. And then you're doing other stuff and you come back and you decide you're going to try this road. And I love how those seemingly small items become like the decision. Thank God you made it, right?
It's just always so bizarre to me, still to this day, like how the stars line up and like remembering that stuff. And Allison would tell you I can't even remember to take the trash out. So how I remember that stuff is, I think, frustrating for her maybe sometimes. But.
I'm sure. It's funny to reference kind of that, making a decision on like one item like that. I'll share this one quickly. This is a moose hunting story, but this was like 15, I think. One of the many family hunts that I referenced in the saga of the Richards family. We had a my cousin had a zone 4 bull permit in October and actually had a couple trail cameras out and had one picture of a bull in August on this trail camera, or like late August versus September. I think it was August, maybe early September, but it was weeks before the October season. Yep. And hadn't seen it again since. And it was just so massive that he's like, and we were staying at some camps way up on the border that I know well. And we were staying there, and we had an hour and 25-minute truck ride to get to that spot in the morning. Going there was, and you're driving by great moose country the whole time.
I mean, everywhere for the most part is
literally everywhere. Yeah. And I'll never forget this. I couldn't believe it. We get there Monday morning. We park way down towards the end of this road. My uncle was with us. He actually had hurt his back, couldn't even walk. So he's like laying next to the truck to like be flat on the ground because he'd injured his back. I mean, we're way out. There's no one around. And we had walked up over the knoll. The road came down and hit this grassy winter road. There's a ridge off to the left. And actually, as we're coming down the road, lesson, walking in the pitch black earlier than we needed to, There was a moose right there next to the road, takes off bombing through the trees up on top of that ridge.
It's such a heartbreaker because what if it's him?
And I'll be honest, I don't know that it wasn't.
Right.
I mean, it sounded big taking off. And the road went down and hooked. And then the ridge up top kind of went paralleled the road. And anyways, we called all the way down this road, did a little cow calling, some raking and grunting, alternated, get all the way down into this yard, and then raked and grunt. We were going to call there for like our planners. We'll call here for the morning. Dude, we got to that yard. We did a little rake and a couple of cow calls, and this bull lights up on the ridge. I mean, lit up, loud.
Ugh.
And we're like, the second we got there, and we're like, okay. And I really wonder if it was the bull, and because he pushed down the ridge and then looped in on us.
Right.
I don't know that, but man, oh man, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And my cousin Brandon he had practiced his calling clearly. That year he'd gotten really good. And so he's doing some calls and had a couple canoe paddles that we were raking with, the Jim Shockey plan, I guess. and dude, we just started raking calling, and that bull ate, dude, the thing came right in. It was a 57.5-inch bull.
Monster.
And I'll never forget that, dude. It was like Monday morning, and we're standing over. I'm like, guys, I cannot believe that we decided to come hunt here for this moose off of one trail camera picture that we got like 5, 6, 7 weeks ago.
Think about your feeling in there, because it happens to me, like that whole ride happens to me deer hunting wherever we're going. You know, and you're going by all these roads and you're like, I should go in here. I should go in here. Why am I going this far? Like, this is a good spot. This is a good, you're driving by all of these, but you got to go with your gut, right? You got to.
Right.
Because it's so easy to get distracted on, I've seen a deer here, I've seen a moose here, or there's sign in here, but something in your head's telling you, like, I'm going there.
Right.
Sometimes I don't win that battle, honestly. Sometimes I end up somewhere else, and you'll never know, right?
Right. But Tommy talked a lot about that when he got the horseshoe bull.
Yeah.
He'd hunted that road however many times, and they drove by there, and he's just, something's eating. He goes, we got to go back in there. We got to go in there. We got to go in there.
Yep.
Well,
it's a natural tendency too. You get frustrated with a spot, right, when it doesn't produce, and you want to write it off, but it's not good policy to just abandon something. I don't think completely, anyway.
I heard a saying, don't leave moose country to go look for moose country.
Yeah, that's probably the best saying I've heard in a long time.
So
that's pretty.
Hey, so I want to transition a bit to the water. I don't know that we've had a fishing story yet on the Moose Hunt podcast, and so you're going to help us crack this. But kind of just share with us, I guess, what you caught. Was this like a planned fishing trip? Was this just a boat ride with the girlfriend and a buddy? Like, what, were you hardcore fishing? Were you just out for a cruise? Like, what happened?
Combo. So, and in retrospect, I do really well on my way home from work, or after work, I should say. But again, I had come home from work, and interestingly, when I left work, and I was texting a buddy, and who is a diehard togue fisherman, and I mean, I fish for togue a lot, but he just like lives it, eats it, sleeps it, breathes. Yeah. And he's a logger, and so he's self-employed, and he can't just knock off at the drop of a hat, because if you're not working, you're not making money, and
right.
So I'm texting him, it's whatever it was, I think July 2nd or whatever, and beautiful, sunny, gonna be a hot day. I'm like, dude, let's go out in the boat. Forget work for the day. Let's go out in the boat. Just come to my house. We'll hook onto my boat. Let's just go. Well, you know how that goes. As much as you would have loved to have, that doesn't pay the bills. So,
yeah.
I flew home, did some stuff around the house, like 11:30, 12 o'clock. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to go fishing, whatever. Went up, and we live pretty close to where I caught that fish, so it's not too big of a deal. And I just went out fishing, man. Like, I was alone. I Allison was at work, really just midsummer, didn't have any projects going on, so off I went. Fished for a while, hour or two, I guess, and had a lead core line out and was fishing with a downrigger on bottom for lake trout. Had the lead core line out just for salmon, brook trout, whatever, and it got really hot, and I'm like, well, I'll fish for another hour or so, and I just opened the bail on my lead core line and just sent it like 15 colors out, right, intentionally right into the bottom. And never changed lures or anything from salmon fishing, just kind of
just dropped it.
Yeah. And I got was doing a few circles in a specific area on the lake, and just trolling, enjoying the day, and the rod kind of bent over. Picked it up, set the hook, got everything ready to fight a fish, which is a chore kind of sometimes in the boat by yourself. And as I got, with that much line out, there's a ton of sag. I don't know how much some people know about that and stuff, but it takes a few colors to get it into where the line is actually tight. And then I knew I had something going. Never in my life would I have expected what the result was going to be, but an hour and a half later.
That's how long you fought that fish?
Time-wise, everybody asks, and how do you put an exact time on it? My recollection,
right,
like the last time I looked at the clock and when I got to the boat launch is like 2 hours. So I figured it probably took an hour and a half, The cool part was, I can't remember his name, but shout out to the guy from Southern Maine who had come up on his own that day and was fishing kind of around me. He saw me sitting, because at one point I was sitting in the seat of my boat. The line was straight down and I was just holding my rod. I could see the fish. I'll never forget this, on the fish finder at 76 feet. I couldn't reel, and I wouldn't let it pull line out. So literally we stalemated for probably 45 minutes. Just sat there and held the rod. Couldn't do anything.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah, just sat there with the rod, tucked into your hip, left hand on the rod, kind of just figuring out my next move, trying to reel in a few feet. Every time I'd reel in 5 feet, it would take 6 back,
Yeah.
This guy came over. He was awesome. He's talking to me, and he's kind of just watching. And to shorten up a long, boring story, kind of from here on out, played it, fought it, line in, line out, and finally, at one point, I was just like, I'm just going to go for it. I'm not going to sit here all day. So
I'm just going to go for it.
Tightened my drag up a little bit and started cranking, and in the fish fought a little bit, but I think that time frame had worn it out pretty well, because when it broke the surface, it belly rolled.
Yeah.
And I got it to the boat, and I was worried that it was going to start thrashing, and it really never did. But I looked at my standard size landing net, and I'm like, yeah, that ain't going to work. Threw that back in the bow of the boat, because I couldn't have even fit probably half the fish in that thing.
Really?
And kind of like, I brought it up to the back of the boat, reached into the gill plate, and had to drag it up over the back of the boat by the outboard like a deer, basically. And then, so the cool part, I always say one of the funniest, coolest parts about that story is this guy, shame on me for forgetting his name, but he motors over in his boat and he parks next to me and he goes, "Dude, you just caught a state record togue." That's the first thing he said to me. And I'm like, how do you know that? Like, I didn't even know what the poundage was for the state record or whatever, And
Right.
He's like, I'm like, I don't think so. I said, it's big, maybe 20, 25 pounds. Definitely the biggest lake trout I've ever caught. And he's like, yeah. You have scales? Nope.
No.
So he's like, I think I do. And he rummaged around in his boat for a little while, and he finally found them. And he took a picture that I still have of me holding it up by the scales, and it actually rang up like 39.4 pounds when I first weighed on the water.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So I took couple of beach towels that we keep in the boat, soaked them in water, rolled them up in it, and just hammered back to town. And then I was like, what do you even do?
Right.
Who knows how to manage that, right? So I called the local game warden, and he was like, you got to get to certified scales. I'm like, well, so I went to, at the time, the only place that had certified scales was 40 miles away in South Paris. And they hung it up on their deer scales, and at that point it was 39.2 pounds was what it weighed.
Wow. How long was it?
44 inches.
That is an absolute
Yeah, but
giant.
I think I still say anybody that asks the most impressive measurement on that fish. So after that, I had to go back and see the warden. He has to do the measurements and all that and certify it. And like just behind the gill plate, where the head meets the backbone, was 26 inches in circumference.
Wow. So like the girth of it, basically.
Yeah, was when he started measuring it, it was enormous.
Dude, I've never even seen a togue like half that size. Like,
I think
I've never
odd up till then was like 15 pounds.
I think I'm like, yeah, I think of like a dozen pounds or something at the most. At the most. Wow.
It was, I mean, I've been fortunate, and it was awesome.
That will now. Do you remember how much that beat the prior record by? I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
8 pounds and change or something like that.
8 pounds and change.
Yeah, 31 something was. So cool story. I know we're burning some time here, but
no, we're good. This is awesome.
I got so that the state record was from the 50s, and I got a letter from that gentleman's either daughter or granddaughter, I don't remember, in the mail, and thanking me for just like really representing the fish well and the record, and like, kind of like honoring her grandfather's record, and being, just like being humble, and just like not kind of almost like not making a big deal about it. You know what I mean? And she really appreciated that. And that was by far the best part.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's awesome.
She said that, if her grandfather was still alive, he would be happy that the new record was, managed or whatever the way that it was.
Very cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
Very cool. And then everyone and their brother showed up the following spring.
That lake. Yep, pretty much. You couldn't park in the same township next year up there.
Township.
At the boat launch, but it's calmed down a little bit. And I guess something to keep in mind too, that was summer of COVID, summer number one, so I think that influx in boat traffic was bound to happen anyway, but I take full responsibility for most of it.
We'll publish your address for the hate mail.
Yeah, I've gotten some.
I'm sure you have. Awesome. I love it. Well, we'll switch gears here to kind of our, kind of gear suggestion here. I actually get some questions about, particularly when we talk with clients, but I'm sure anyone, if they're going on a moose hunt, I think it varies on where you're going. If you're, so much of our suggestion is, we have a lot of access in terms of, we can use vehicles to get to an area to go hunt, versus, what we would suggest to someone have in their pack or things they carry with them may not necessarily be the most applicable if you're getting flown in Alaska and dropped at a bush camp. That may be different. Two different worlds. But if you're hunting areas where you can have, you may be walking 10, 12 miles a day, but you're leveraging a logging road network, is kind of what we do. And for me, when I think of my pack, I actually got it. I use a Tenzing 1250 personally. I don't know that it really matters what kind of pack you carry, but
None of them.
None of them are quiet.
That's my only beef with it.
Yeah, none of them are quiet. I don't have. I have one that is like wool for that I carry sometimes deer hunting. That's a little smaller than that.
Yeah.
I don't even know that that's quiet.
No, and honestly, what I carry is night and day different between deer hunting and moose season.
Yes, could not be more different. So when you think about your pack, what do you think are the essentials that you carry that you'd encourage people have on their person?
I mean, I think there's some things that I guess we consider obvious. Maybe they're not, but a lot of times my shoulder blade strapped to my pack. Scents. I carry like 3 or 4 different wind checkers, bottles of wind checkers, milkweed pods if I can find them. Tommy's pretty good about handing those out, so that's convenient. But because 1, it goes quicker than you think, the powder form stuff, and 2, I lose stuff. So
I'm the same way.
The things that are important, I make sure I have at least a couple of them.
Yeah.
And I think probably really the most important thing, they teach it in guide training. Being a paramedic, it kind of holds a spot dear to my heart, but is a really good first aid kit. And I don't mean like a few Band-Aids. I mean like stop the hemorrhage, gunshot wounds, fell on a stick, fell on a blowdown. I mean, things that are going to make the difference, because minor, not to a big box first aid kit, generally speaking, don't even bother. Build a good one.
Yeah.
The second thing, I guess, relates to that is, and we, and I think it's good to push kind of to the general public. My pack has on the left side on each waist strap, it has a pouch. The right side has my rangefinder because I use that way more. But the left side has an opened, ready to go tourniquet. And along with that, it's a little bit of self-taught muscle memory so that I know where that is. To me, that's if I need to grab that when I'm not thinking clearly. And trust me, if something bad happens, from experience, you're not going to be thinking as clearly as you like to believe that you are. It's got to be ready to go. It's got to be open, and it's got to be in a pocket where you know it is. Like that's something from my job that I try to tell everybody that I learn, that I push is put it where you're going to get it when you need it, because when you need it, it's going to be the worst moment of your life.
Yep. Well said.
And so that the other stuff is pretty generic, There's one thing in my particular pack that I carry that I know for a fact nobody else carries, and that is a hunting knife that my uncle, who's no longer with us, gave to me. I don't use it. We're big Avalon users, and that makes the most sense, but I carry it superstitiously as good luck, and that's both packs. Whatever I'm hunting all year long, that thing rides with me everywhere.
So actually, I got to tell you something. Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed, I have a buck knife, a wood-handled buck knife on my belt that I carry moose hunting. I never use it.
Yep.
And my uncle Ricky gave that to me.
Yep.
5 days before he passed away from pancreatic cancer. No joke.
Yeah, that's
no
pretty
jokes.
much how my uncle.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that one, brother.
Cool.
I'm with you
like I said, I don't
one.
use it, but where I go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, one thing you touched on that, and I actually like to circle back to that in a second here, the paramedic side of things is, for me, I echo that. I think one big thing I encourage, I would say beyond that is, you have your tools for your hunt, so to speak. Safety is everything. So that comes with your first aid kit, as you just touched upon. I think the only other thing I would add to that, I tend to carry probably more than I need to.
Yeah.
But one thing I like about the Tenzing pack is it has straps that come up that are like open. And so what I found is I can get Cowlina, which Cowlina is my Montana canvas cow decoy. When she rolls up, I can fit her. I can fit her behind my back rolled up.
That's good.
And so I carry a decoy with, and they weigh nothing, but I always have that because, and I actually almost used it in my September hunt, but it just happened so fast I didn't even have time to like get it out and use it.
Yep.
That allows me to have cover. Like, you're going to get caught in the open. Crap, we're walking down the road. There's a bull right there. Can you get that in front of you and act like a moose, you know?
Yeah, we have one of those decoys that we kind of bought like as a family over the years getting tags. I need to get my own. I think it's time.
Yeah. Yeah. They're a powerful tool. And I've used them. I've used them to the most success, I'll be honest, Eric, in the evenings. Like if you have that hot day and they aren't moving at all, so you're like calling in the evening till dark, putting that up and calling to it, put a ton of scent on it. Pro tip.
Yeah.
If you soak your cow decoy in cow urine, don't put it in your pickup truck on the way home.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but the other thing I think that is huge, and I put it, and part of it is we're always as a team working. You know, we want to know if each other are successful, how each other are doing, if there's anything wrong. I put a premium on communication.
Yeah.
So I carry, and some people might chuckle at this, but you should never rely on technology exclusively. That technology is a wonderful thing, you know? And so, you know, I carry a Rhino radio. I carry an InReach.
Yeah, I carry an InReach as well, now that you mention it. And those things are worth their weight in gold, man.
They are. I would say to anyone out there, if you hunt and fish, especially if you end up going off grid with it.
Yeah, and a thing that I've learned in the past with InReach, and you can see when you open it up, if somebody InReaches you and it comes to your phone and you click on it, your phone on Google Earth or whatever or Google Maps will drop a pin where they InReached you from.
Right.
Think about that.
Exactly.
That's huge, you know.
Right. So, funny story for that. Deer story we'll save for another episode.
How to give away your spot 101.
Yeah. But I enraged my wife, not this season, but last year when I shot the COVID buck, the buck we called the COVID buck. And I enraged her, just shot a giant, and I shot it, I don't know, 20 minutes before dark, you know, towards the end of the day. And she screenshot that and sent that around. And what was funny is I started getting InReach messages like crazy because my father's like, "You're really way the hell up there?" I was deep in zone 4, deep. And, but anyway, it literally, and that's it. But that's a powerful thing. If you can say, my truck broke down, this is exactly where I am, you know?
Oh yeah.
But I think the communication's key. I carry the InReach. I carry the cell phone fully charged. I carry the Rhino. I carry a 2-way radio. In addition to that, I have a premium, like we all have premium radios in our trucks. And then I carry a little battery pack that has a solar panel on it. And then a little charger cord for each of those items. And I think I just want to know I can get in touch with help if I need it, or people can get in touch with me if they need it, or whatever. That's a biggie for sure from my suggestion. So I think those are just some tips for us, but I'd like to circle back, you know, Eric, you know, being, you know, emergency, you know, medical services. Can I make a joke about that?
Oh, sure.
My good cousin, one of my best friends and cousin, Timmy, He's on fire department in Lisbon.
Mm-hmm.
And he made a joke one time that he said, I think it's Lisbon, I can't remember, that EMS stood for earn money sleeping.
That must have been true at one point.
Once upon a time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, in terms of, hunting, suggestions on trainings people should do or things they should be most ready for from your perspective, hunting, or even if they're going to do this, get into this commercially, just general thoughts on it.
Safety stuff or?
Yeah. Safety stuff. Is it first aid, general? Should they be seeking something more significant than that? What would you encourage someone to maybe be ready for?
First aid, I think, is, hands down. There are some wilderness oriented classes out there, like wilderness first aid and stuff, that are definitely like above and beyond your generic sitting in a classroom. What do you do if your coworker gets a paper cut kind of class, and it's wilderness related, and
right.
Those are definitely good. Heck, man, I would tell everybody, if you have the time in your life, because it's really not a lot of time, take an EMT class. Even if you never do anything with it, there's a profound amount of knowledge that just you can't learn in an 8-hour day,
Right.
But you don't do all that stuff. Make sure you're prepared and know your capabilities. Be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And just work on having a level head. And if you have that training and have that mindset, I think, you should be good to go.
Awesome. Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Well, we're at the hour mark, folks. Erik, I have to say, it's awesome to sit down with you. It's now warmed up to 4 degrees here, so I think I'm ready.
Snowmobiling?
I'm getting ready to go snowmobiling now.
Yeah. Have fun.
Yeah. So, but to all our listeners out there, thank you so much. Thank you, Erik, for sharing those stories. It's awesome to have you on. So cool to hear the different passions and experiences everyone has. To our listeners out there, stay tuned in. We're coming up to show season, I guess I'd say, in Maine. So stay tuned for the Maine sportsman shows and those types of things, because we'll probably have a presence at some of these with the team. Look out to see if we end up doing, if we're tabling or seminaring. I'm not sure what our plan is yet, but we're going to be around. Hope to interact with people and kind of get out of the cabin fever, man. Like the Maine sportsman show is like the kickoff to the season. I feel like that's the start of it right there.
It's coming.
So with that, to all our listeners out there, be safe, be well, and as always, God bless.